Hi, everyone. Glad you're getting on.
I'm not familiar with this Zoom.
We did a little practice Zoom last week with Jeff,
Yeah.
so he's experienced, and after tonight, he'll really be experienced. And I hope I'm experienced enough to handle it.
Well, I figure it's kind of like just being at home watching TV because they're probably always watching you through the television anyway. I'm like a lot of people like Michelle here. When I'm not using the laptop, I put a piece of tape over the camera because I don't want anybody just peeking. Now, probably, I know they're listening to me because
That's
every time
right.
I talk about something and then go on Facebook to look at a post, there's an ad that pops up for what I just talked about. So
Right.
I know they're listening.
And we are going to record this, so if anyone wants to go back and review it, or you have a friend that couldn't come tonight, we'll have it out on our website and probably after the weekend.
But I'm 69 years old. I'm slightly mentally ill, and I'm not responsible for anything that I say. Let's put that disclaimer out
Yeah,
there.
that disclaimer goes. Yeah.
That excuse is as good as any, so hey.
Well, you've hung out with me. You know how I am.
All right, it looks like we have 9 people now. We'll just, so I'm going to get started right now. I don't know if Henry's out there yet. I don't see him. I know he had a meeting before this, so we may have to get him to remind me of anything going on with Friends of Shades Creek that I'm forgetting. Oh, there he is. Hi, Henry. So one of the things we want to make sure that you know about is that, hi, Henry. We are going to have the Salamander Festival. We are planning on it to be in person, and it's going to be at Homewood High School this year. Now we're crossing our fingers that, you know, everything with the COVID and everything doesn't get worse and we don't have to call it off. But we're going forward with having it at the high school where in the gym, where we'll have lots of space, social distance, and we're inviting lots of conservation groups to come join us. So that there will be lots of space, and you can wear masks, and especially, and we'll have some limits about how many people are around the salamanders to hold them. And that's what I have. Henry, can you think of something that we need to announce tonight's meeting? I didn't look at the notes from our meeting last week. And we can't hear you.
No, I can't. I have several of our members here at the house, but
Yay, okay, good.
doing the annual Audubon Society Board party. So I apologize for being late, but no, I can't think of anything we need to add.
Okay, all right.
But
Well, it's good to see you here tonight. We're pleased that you're joining us for this program. Looks like we have a good turnout.
Well, that puts a lot of pressure on me to have Margaret White on there. She's well respected, well respected.
Did you hear that, Marjorie? Pressure's on now. So
One of these days, I hope to get to meet her in person.
okay, yeah, we should make that happen for you, so you can meet in person. Well, if we have no other announcements, if everyone will turn themselves to mute except for Jeff, we are going to go on with the slideshow.
Now, are they going to be able to type in questions if they'd like?
Yes, yes, we will have the chat window open. So if you have questions along the way, so we don't keep interrupting Jeff, if you'll just type in your question, then we'll get to it at an appropriate time.
Yeah.
and Dick and Carol just joined us from North Carolina, it looks like.
Oh, good. Dick Mills, do you know?
Hello, Dick and Carol.
No, I don't believe I do.
Oh, hi, Dick. Hi, Carol.
Yeah, I like questions that sometimes.
There he is.
Yay,
Dick,
there. Good to have you.
Carol.
All right, I think we are ready here. So I'm going to do a screen save and we are recording it. So let me get the recording going.
Pressure's on. All right.
Here we are.
Yes, we are.
And when you get ready, you can do this.
Just push the button and it'll go to the next
Yeah,
one.
go to the next one. So here we are.
Well, I don't know how many of y'all know me. My name is Jeff Newman. I've lived in Birmingham all of my life. I grew up on the south side of Birmingham on Green Springs Avenue, just below, I guess, the V Club area. The Birmingham Mineral Railroad Red Gap branch was just 200 feet behind my house. So at age 12, I got my first exposure to some of Birmingham's railroad and mining history. There were 4 open iron ore mines in the woods up behind my house. So at age 12 and 13, I started exploring underground. My mother didn't care much for it and she'd spank me when I'd come home, but she soon found out that that wasn't really doing any good. So she just left me alone and hoped for the best. But after doing that around the house and exploring from Vulcan Park all the way over to Green Springs Highway, when I turned 16, I got an automobile and was able to expand out my search areas. And I started going down to the Birmingham Public Library and to the Research Center and spent a lot of time down there going through old documents and photographs and trying to get as much information as I could about the iron ore mining on Red Mountain, the companies that operated them, and some of the people who worked in the mines. So at a very early age, it just became kind of a mission or a passion of mine to find out more about it. And later in life, I discovered that I had 3 relatives, 2 grandfathers and a birth father who were all coal miners. And so I figured maybe my love for this was a genetic type thing. And so I've spent 10 years hiking from Trussville to Bessemer. My 2 Bibles that I used for my explorations were the story of coal and iron in Alabama. And I also used the 1910 U.S. Geological Survey, iron ore skills and fluxes of the Birmingham district. So with those pieces of information and a big quarter section map so that I could find them, I spent 10 years hiking the Red Mountain or the Mineral Railroad grades and locating all of the mines. And I think I found them all. I may have missed 1 or 2 out there, but my wife, when I met her, I explained to her my hobbies. And I said, now this is my life. This is what I do on the weekends. And on our very first date, I took her for pizza and then hiked her up the mountain to the Valley View mine and gave her a tour, and she didn't run away. So I married her and she's still hanging around and all of that. So, but anyway, I've got some photographs here that I'm going to just kind of go through and explain to you. It's from some of our underground adventures. Explain to you what we're seeing in the photos. If you have questions, please type them in and I will answer them. And I don't know, people will call me and they'll say, well, we have this professional or this expert. They'll say, we have this expert on mining history. I do not claim to be an expert. I claim to be a mining enthusiast. There's so much information out there in libraries and research facilities that I have not been able to read, that I really probably only know about 10% of what's out there. So if I say something and you've read something that conflicts with that or is different, I would love to have that information so that I can get the story as correct as possible, because that is my goal. Is when I go out to civic groups and school groups, and I tell them about the history of Birmingham's mining. In fact, I did 4 sessions with elementary school over Deer Valley last week, and they seemed thoroughly interested in it. They had a lot of great questions. So not only do I like to go out and search for this stuff, I enjoy sharing it with as many people as will listen to me. And they'll always say, well, how much do we have to pay you to get you to come out here? And I said, well, it doesn't cost anything to get me to show up, but you might offer me some money to shut up, because once I get started, I mean, there's so much that we could go for a week on this. So anyway, I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to start showing you some photos, and we'll start talking about some of the things that I've come across in my gosh, I don't know. I've been doing this for 46 years, exploring the mines. So I've seen to a lot of things and been to a lot of places. So we'll just kind of get started with it. The picture that you see up there right now is the number 13-inch Cuda mine at Red Mountain Park that we just recently opened. One of the goals when I started working at Red Mountain Park 12 years ago was to try to convince them to open a few of the mines. It took me 9 years to get it done, but we opened number 10 2 years ago. We opened the Songo mine a year and a half ago, and then we opened number 13 last month. So now I got to work on number 14, see if we can get it open. But I think it's just an outstanding thing to have people be able to come out to Red Mountain Park, walk out and actually see a mine that's open. Now, a lot of people mistake that when I say open and they think they can just walk in. Well, we have steel bars in place inside the mine, 15 feet down the tunnel, so that they cannot go into the mines, but they can go a few feet and get the feeling of what it would have been like as you're walking down into the darkness. And then when they turn around and look the other direction, they can see the arch of the opening, and they can imagine what the miners may have seen as they are coming out of the mines every afternoon. So I think there was a picture before this.
Okay, we'll look at that. I was going to let everyone see Janet. She is here with us. So here's Janet with us tonight.
That's my wife, Janet. She's the one that puts up with all of my clutter and stuff at home, and my basement full of coal and iron ore and limestone and railroad pieces, and anything I happen to find and bring home ends up in the basement.
I think this is the first one we had on there.
Okay, well, I had the one with my feet sticking out.
Oh, yeah, I think it's the next one. Let's see.
Yes.
Well, let's see.
Yeah,
It's the second
Now,
one.
of course, we had the picture there of number 13 in the portal and how to get into the mines, and having them open like that now sure makes it a whole lot easier to get in. I did let them convince them to let me put security bolts on the fronts of these mines so that if TC wants to go see something, we can get in to see them. But if you don't have those gates, this is how you have to access the mines. You go out into the woods and you walk around and you find a place where there's a small subsidence where the mine is shallow, it's caved in and created a small hole, and you just kind of climb through.
We don't recommend that, though.
No, I don't recommend that anybody goes inside any of these mines, because these things are dangerous. They've been sitting there since 1963 when the last one closed, unmaintained. So the ceilings are in pretty bad shape, especially in the work headings. The main slopes are in pretty good shape because they used iron rebar I-beams and roof bolts. So the main slopes are in real good shape, but once you get off into the work headings, they were temporary and they will fall in on you. Fortunately, in 46 years of doing this, I've never gone back into a mine. Well, excuse me, one mine I've gone back into in that time where I've seen a major collapse. Everything else, it looks exactly like it does when I first started. So, but anyway, I don't recommend that you go into these things. I hope that you'll use my craziness and look at my photos and kind of experience it through me. So we can go on over. What I've got here is a little map that I drew real quick, and I didn't realize that there was a version of this in the Shades Creek book that came out on page 46. But I had drawn this little map up real quick at home just to show you the immense number of mines that are located that go down under Shades Valley and down under Shades Creek, stretching from I-65 over to Highway 150. Basically, every quarter of a mile, and there's the photo in the, and it's on page 46 in the book. It's actually pretty good because it shows you all the streets and you get an exact scale of where these things are located. This is not to scale, but it just shows you that about every quarter of a mile along the crest of Red Mountain, there is an iron ore mine starting at Trustful and going all the way down to below Bessemer over to I-459. So they're just tunnels and tunnels and tunnels all the way through there. And it was an experience going out and locating all of this. But like I say, over the time I have done that. If there's anything out there that you would like to see, you can contact me and I'll be more than happy to hike you out through the poison ivy and whatever to get to them and show you these things. But anyway, so we'll go on to the next one. Let's see, next.
It's not cooperating very well, is it?
Well, that's computers. They don't like me.
Oh, there
Okay.
we go. Yeah, we missed
So
one.
here we are. Did we skip
We
over?
skipped one.
Yeah, okay. That's just a different view of the opening. It's a little more straight on looking down. You can see the bars. Now, this is when you go inside number 13, this is what you see when you stand on the other side of the bars. Is you're looking down the main haulage way. You can see that at the top of the mine, and not all the mines are done like this, but the Tennessee Coal and Iron generally, until they got down deep enough to get within inside the big seam of the Red Mountain iron ore seams, where it was about 25 feet thick, you had to go through some loose material in the geology. So TCI would put these concrete tunnels in at the tops of the mines to help support it. And so that's what you're seeing here is one of those concrete tunnels. This one's about 100 feet long. And once you get down past that, it opens up into the actual mining area. What you're seeing here, of course, on the ground, you can see the railroad ties where the mine cars would be, rails would be located. They started out using small gauge rails, but back in the early days, Tennessee Coal and Iron converted everything to standard gauge width rail. Of course, some of the tunnels weren't high enough to use full-scale locomotives, but they did have some short version locomotives that they could put in there and pull the cars around. But you're looking down the slope and you see the railroad ties. Also in the middle there, you see a roller on the ground. What that is that's where when they were pulling the mine cars in and out of the mines, they had a 1 7/8 inch diameter steel cable that hooked to the mine car and would lower it down into the mines and pull it back out. And so the cable didn't just drag on the ground. They had those rollers every 20 feet. So the cable could roll on top of the rollers. And then, of course, you can see looking down the main haulage. Now, over here on the right-hand side of the picture, you see what looks like a little cut-out area in the concrete. what they would do with that is if you were coming out of the mine and the mine car is coming up the hill or coming down, and if you didn't want to get run over, you could step over into that opening and stand there until the mine car would go by. So that would give you a place to get out of the way when the mine cars were coming up and down. Okay, let's go over here. Okay, now that is what the inside of the number 13 mine looked like before we opened it. TCI had come in, they had put in some railroad ties across there, put some corrugated tin to create a form, and they poured a 24-inch thick concrete wall to seal this mine off so that people could not be able to get in. And you can see that that didn't work out very well because I did get in and I got a nice picture to prove it. But anyway, so when they opened the mine up, they had to come in, excavate all of the dirt that had been piled up in front of that. Then we had ABC concrete cutters come over and they cut the concrete into 3 by 5 foot sections. Then we had another gentleman come in with a track hoe and a jackhammer on it. He broke out all of that concrete, cleaned it out, and then we ended up with a nice clean opening going down in there. And my grandson, who was a welder, came over and welded the bars in place so that people can look in but can't get in. And also the bars, we made sure we left enough space in the bars that bats could get into it, and so we can use it for a future bat habitat. Up until the mine was open, though, we were not seeing any bats in this particular mine. So which one?
It's this one.
That
Yeah.
one, okay. Okay, this is looking down the main slope again. So once you clear the concrete part of the mine slope, you can see they've got some poles in there and they've got some I-beams across the top, and they've used roof bolting to bolt those in there to support the ceiling. Now, this mine closed in 1958, and looking at the floor of the mine, you can see how well the roof bolts are doing their job, because there is no scrap rock on that floor at all. That mine is still in great shape, at least the main haulage way. And so it's just surprising that it's held up that well. Now, when you go into one of the mines on Red Mountain, these mines used to go back 2 to 2.5 miles into Shades Valley. And when you get back out into the valley that far, the mines were 1,800 feet below the surface. But when they stopped mining the mines in 1963, they turned all the pumps off. And so all of the mines have now filled up with water. So where at one point you used to be able to walk down this main haulage way for 2 miles, now you can only go generally from 500 to maybe 1,000 feet, and then you hit flooded water. Now the number 3 that you see on the side of the wall there in the mine, that designated to the miners which work heading they were located at. So we're standing next to the number 3 right work heading, and then over to the left where that pole is coming down from the ceiling, that's where it turns off to the left to go into the number 3 left work heading.
Now, Jeff, can you explain what the headings are?
Yeah, the headings
Can you
are, the headings,
pull up just a little bit closer to the computer?
yeah.
Yeah, just make sure we can hear you. Okay.
Okay. The work headings in the mines are where they were actually excavating the iron ore out of the mines. So they would go down the main slope, and at about 80-foot intervals, they would turn off a work heading to the left and to the right. These work headings could go out 400 or 500 feet, or they could go 1,000 feet. Generally, they went over until it hit the property line to the next mine, and then they would either stop there. Now, Tennessee Coal and Iron owned most of the mines along here. So when number 13's work headings went over and hit number 14's work headings, they just connected together and kept going. But when they would get the work headings in there about 80 feet apart, the tunnels would be about 8 or 9 feet wide. Well, they would start working from the number 3 work heading back up the slope towards the number 2 work heading to dig the iron ore out. So you ended up with a work heading that was maybe 25, well, more than that, 40 to 60 feet. But then they would leave a wall between the number 2 and the number 3 work heading to support that roof as they continued to work. And they would also use some wooden support poles, which we'll see in some later photos. But that's what the work headings were. That's where they were actually digging the iron ore out. And they would bring it back to the main slope and then haul it out of the mines. So now that's the number 14 mine opening. That's what it looks like today. And that's sort of what number 13 used to look like before we opened it. It had the concrete seal in the front of it, and they had pushed dirt up over it. And this mine opened in 1895, and the 1941 date that you see on that portal is not when it closed. That was the year that they poured the concrete portal entrance. A lot of the mines around town will have an opening and closing date. Tennessee Coal and Iron didn't do that. They put the opening date. The second date you see on it is the date that they poured the concrete portal. This mine closed in I think it was 49, because it had been closed, but they reopened it during the World War II. And then after World War II, they shut it back down. Hopefully, I'm going to get TC to open this one up, because this one is very cool looking once you get inside. And again, that's what number 14 looks like on the inside with the concrete wall in place. Now this is turned around looking down number 14. And this one is one that I like because it has so many I-beams in it. It's just very interesting to look at it with all of that in there. Another thing that I'd like to mention while I'm looking at this, when I was talking about work headings, is if you can see the work heading located there just to the top left, and you notice it's at a different height than the main haulage way. And what they were doing is back in the 1870s and 1860s, when they were mining, they used a system called TRIP, T-R-I-P, TRIP cars. They were little 2-ton iron ore mining cars. They would hook about 8 or 9 of them together and lower them down into the mine. And they had tracks that would turn off into the work headings at the same level of the main slope. And so they did that for many years, but later they got away from that system and they went to a new system called a skip car. A skip car would hold 16 tons of iron ore. And so what they would do then is the skip car would not turn off into the work heading and go out to get the ore. It stayed in the main slope. They used smaller cars in the work headings to bring the ore to the skip car. So in order to dump it into the skip car, they lowered the level of the main slope by 12 feet. So that way that the work heading was higher than the slope, and the ore cars in the work headings could come out and just dump directly down into the skip car, and then they would pull it out. So that's why there's a difference in the height of the work heading as opposed to the main slope.
Now, Jeff, what is the wire that goes along the
Good question.
along the tunnel there?
That wire that's running down the side of the tunnel is back before they had telephones and were able to communicate to one another. Those cables ran down the side of the main slope, and you had a man who was in charge of the mine car. And in order to tell the man in the hoist house whether to raise the car, lower the car, stop it, how far, they had this cable that ran all the way the length of the slope, and it terminated into the hoist house at the top of the mountain or on the other side of the mountain. The man on the skip car had a battery pack, and it had a pole on it. And he could take the battery pack and he would reach up and he would touch that wire. And when he did, it would ring a bell or sound a buzzer in the hoist house. And TCI had sort of a Morse code system set up. So two quick ones and a long one, or three and a long one, whatever, would tell the hoist operator what he needed to do. And that's how they communicated in the mines at that time. So when you see those wires running down both sides or one side, that was their communication system for the hoist operators at that time.
That's very interesting. Now, we do have a question here. How did you get into the mines such as 13 and 14 when the concrete was across the entrance?
Okay, going back to the picture of me with my feet sticking out of the ground. The mines on Red Mountain, the iron ore seam outcrops directly along the crest of the mountain. So your iron ore seam, as you go down the south face of the mountain, at the top of the mountain, and probably for 100 or 200 yards down the hill, is very shallow. Your iron ore seam is only 20, 30 feet below the surface. So when they would build the work headings, since the work headings were going to be worked out real quick and abandoned, they would only put trees, timbers, and things in the wooden timbers to support the ceilings. And then when they finally mined it out, they didn't care whether the work heading collapsed or not. So up at the tops of the mountains where it's shallow, when these work headings would collapse, it would create a subsidence. And over the years, with the rain and the erosion, the water would wash the dirt in the subsidence down and would create these small holes.
And that's how you got in.
So that's how we would get in. We would find a subsidence that had been washed out that was big enough to slide through. And then once you immediately slide through the small hole, you're standing inside the work heading, which is anywhere from 8 to 15 feet tall. Like I say, these iron ore mines on Red Mountain, especially from Vulcan to Bessemer, were mined in what was called the Big Seam, and it ranged from anywhere from 12 to 25 feet in thickness. So your work heading tunnels were always very tall. Now, that wasn't like what you see in a lot of the coal mines, where the coal seams are generally 24 to 36 inches, and occasionally you'll hit a good one and it may be 5 or 6 feet. So all of your coal mines, you see the pictures, the guys are bending over, they're laying on their sides, digging and everything, but that wasn't the case in the majority of the iron ore mines. Now, when you get out to the east side of Birmingham, out around Ruffner Mountain, there are 4 iron ore seams that are on the mountain. There was the Ida seam, and they believe they named that after Idle W.S. McElwain's wife, Ida. Then under the Ida seam, you had the Hickory Nut seam. Hickory Nut seam had iron ore in it, but it really wasn't enough quality in it to mine it. But it was very interesting, though, that it had crinoids. If I may not be pronouncing that right, James Lowry can correct me later on. But they had these little crinoids that were animals, and their fossils are in the iron ore. And when you look at what was left after the shells and all disintegrated, it looks just like a hickory nut laying there. And I have some fairly good samples that I take to school groups to show the kids and all. And I've actually glued hickory nuts to them so that they can look at it and say, well, yeah, it really does look like a hickory nut. Okay, so then under that, you had the Big Seam, and then you had the Irondale Seam. Now out east of Eastwood Mall, with Ruffner and all of that, they mainly mined the Irondale Seam because it was the most developed. The Big Seam in that area was not as well defined. It was thin, it was more broken. And so the majority of the mines at Ruffner in that area are in the Irondale Seam.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, so, okay.
Yeah, great.
And like I say, just pay me a few bucks and I'll stop talking. Yes, sir. Touch that again.
Now we're
Okay.
not cooperating.
Again, this is just looking down one of the main slopes at the materials they use to support the ceilings, and you can see the communications wires running down through there. Actually, in this particular slope, at the top, you can see the conduits that they had run when they started putting electric lights in the mines, and they didn't start doing that until the mid to late 1920s. Before that, it was all just carbide lamps and little teapot lamps. So,
Oh, go ahead.
yes, ma'am.
Oh, so one thing, I know you've been talking about the slope. This is, most of these mines we're looking at tonight are called slope mines, right?
Yes, they are.
And you've said, you told me before, there's 4 kinds of mines in this area. There's slope mines, shaft mines, drift mines, and strip mines.
Yes. Now, the way that Red Mountain iron ore seam is laid out in Red Mountain, since it's on about varies from anywhere from 12 to about 35 degrees in slope going down into the ground. But the whole Birmingham iron ore seam outcrops right along the top of the mountain. So all they had to do is in the early days in the 1860s during the Civil Wars, all they had to do was go to the top of the mountain. It's sticking out of the ground. All they had to do is take picks and shovels. And so the first phase of mining that they did was open cut strip mining along the tops of the mountains. So when they finished with the strip mining and they followed the ore seam down the south side of the ridge, when it finally got down to where the iron ore had so much overburdened dirt above it that they could no longer strip mine, then they would start working down in the ravines that were going down the south side of the mountain, because these outcrops followed down into the ravines. And so when they would do that, they would go down into the ravines and they would do what they call drift mines. Now, drift mines are running horizontally across the dip of the ore. So those tunnels are basically flat.
Okay.
They would put them in there at a slight grade so that the water could naturally run out. Also, when they had a loaded car of ore, it would just basically roll itself out, and then they can use a mule to pull it back in.
Oh.
And so basically that's what a drift mine is. It's kind of the equivalent of above the surface work hitting. So when you finally got to where your drift mines, you've worked your way down the ravine, you're down at the bottom of the south side of the mountain. And now to get to the ore, you're going to have to follow it underground. And since it's on a 23-degree slope, they call them slope mines. A lot of the coal mines, they call the main slopes are called drifts because they're basically flat. But anyway, on iron ore mines, you have your slope mine, which goes down and follows the iron ore down into the ground. And then you cut your work headings off to the side of that. Now, when you get way out into Shades Valley, where you're 1,300 to 1,800 feet below the ground, then you would go into what they call shaft mining. There were 2 shaft mines in Birmingham. One of them was the Woodward Iron Company Pine Mine, which is just off Highway 150. That shaft mine over there, they had 2 shafts into it. And the ore there was anywhere from 1,600 to 2,000 feet below the surface. Eventually, Woodward bought I'm sorry, I need to give me a lapel mic. The Woodward bought the number 4 Tennessee Coal and Iron Muscota mine and connected that slope mine into their shaft mine so they could use that slope haulage to get materials in and out and use it for a utility way. But the Pine Mine was one of the shaft mines. The other one was the Woodward Songo mine which is in Red Mountain Park. If you've been over there, That's where you see the little southwestern Spanish style hoist house. Down that mine originally began working in 1892 as a slope mine from the top of the mountain. But they had a little disagreement with TCI. L&N had the Spring Gap Branch line that came across on the north side of the mountain and serviced the mines from over there. And since Tennessee Coal and Iron owned most all of the mines on Red Mountain in that area, they negotiated with L&N to buy the Spring Gap Branch and its spurs off of it. Well, that's the track that Woodward was using to get their iron off the mountain. So when TCI bought it, they denied Woodward access to that spur. So to get around it, Woodward went on the south side of the hill. This was in 1917. And they dug a 384-foot deep shaft mine to tie in to the Sondo slope.
Wow.
And they named the shaft the Redding Shaft Mine, but it tied into the Sondo. So you had two slope mines in Birmingham. Now people will,
Two shaft mines.
Two shaft mines. People will talk about the Shannon mines with Gulf State Steel that were over in Shades Valley, but it wasn't literally a shaft mine. Over there, what they had was a 55-degree slope mine, but that's pretty steep. So I mean, you know, kind of ballpark, that could be a shaft mine, but get real technical like I do sometimes. I'm a little OCD in the facts. It's not really a shaft, it's a slope.
All right,
So
we ready to go?
Yeah, let's go on to the next one. This is still looking down number 14, and I found this interesting from exploring in that generally you don't see a concrete tunnel down in a mine, but what has happened here is along the starting at the eastern end of Red Mountain Park heading west, there's several geological faults that run through there and offset the depth of the iron ore. And what has happened in this mine is, since this is towards the eastern end of the mountain where the fault is closer to the ridge, they had to go through that fault. And so what they've done here is they had to, you can see the original tunnel is much taller, but they backed up, put in a deeper dip on the slope, went down through the rock to get back down to the iron ore, which had dropped about 85 to 100 feet. And so that's a rock tunnel is what they call that inside the mine. And so that was built in there to get through all of that loose material and then get back down into the iron ore seam. So that's what I thought was interesting about that. Now, this is just starting to get into some pictures of things that we've just seen in the mines. This is looking up number 13. No, I'm sorry, not. This is in number 10. This is looking back up towards, you can see the concrete tunnel up at the top, and just an old barrel laying in there, and it had some orange on it. And I thought, well, that'll make a nice picture, especially with the guys standing up higher, shining their lights up the tunnel. And you still see all of the I-beam supports in there. So this mine is relatively safe in the main slope. Now, this is in one of the work headings of the mine. This is in the, I'm sorry, I keep sliding back. My glasses don't focus right at that distance. But that's in the number 13 mine, and that's in one of the work headings. And you can see as the work heading is going horizontally across the iron ore dip, the ceiling is at a slope because you can see on the right-hand side that sharp shadow there shining on the rock. That's the iron ore seam that you see there. And then above it, you can see the layers of shale and things that are above that iron ore seam. And so what they've gone in there is they've just went in there, they're going to mine it out real quick. They're going to get in, get out. So they basically just took trees, went down through there and propped the ceiling up to hold it until they could get in and get out. There's a lot of that, but that's also why most of the work headings, we don't go down a lot of work headings unless it's got some support. Of course, now the bad thing about these timbers, if you walk up and grab it, it feels like balsa wood and it just kind of crushes in your hand. So it's really not holding anything up. This is another section in number 13 in another work heading. Again, you can see they have the support poles, but also what they have done here is in the section where this mine was already mined out, the rock that they were taking out from further down in the work heading, instead of hauling it all the way out of the mine, they just started stacking it along the side of the work headings. In the coal mines, they refer to this as gobbing. I'm not sure if there was a separate term for that in the iron ore mines or not, but that's what we use. We just follow that. So it's gobbing. Also, you can't see it right here in this particular picture, but in some of the others, you can still see the railroad ties down in there where the mine cars would roll back into the mines. And in a lot of the places, you can still see the mule prints in the mud where the mules were pulling the cars in and out of the mines.
Wow.
Even though they had mechanical haulage pulling the skip cars and the main mining cars out the slope in the work headings, they were still using mules to get the mine cars down to the main slope in the early days before mechanization. Now, this is another picture that I really like. A lot of people, since we do underground Birmingham and everything, one of the questions that we always get is, well, have you seen the underground river in Birmingham? And so I tell people, well, this is about as close as you're going to get to seeing it. And really what this is just a flooded work heading in the mines. Now, I'm not sure, I remember seeing in a newspaper article that somebody had written back, I think in the maybe late 1800s, where they were talking about they had gone down in Birmingham and that there was this river and they could put a boat in it and they could take the boat and go down to the Warrior River. And I think it turned out later to be proven that that was not the case. Now, it is an absolute fact that there is water under downtown Birmingham. It's made up of a limestone foundation under the city. The limestone dissolves relatively easy. So you have just an enormous number of hollowed out places under downtown Birmingham. So you can't dig a building foundation and dig very deep and without hitting water. So yes, there is definitely water under the city of Birmingham. Now, I've offered $500 to anybody who can take me down there, put me in a boat and take me down to the river. And that offer still stands. So if you have the key to the basement door at UAB or wherever this place is hidden, contact me, put me in there, and you're $500 richer. But I don't think it really exists, but it's a great story. This is some more water in one of the work headings. This one is up near Vulcan in the Valley View mine. It's one of the ones that I went in as a kid. And so that one is flooded. So now that mine, you can only go down about 200 feet and get water, and that's it. You're flooded out. But it makes a great looking picture. Now this is some water in a tunnel over on the eastern side of town out near Trustful. You can see that they still have the wooden supports on the main haulage way. Now this mine here is more of a drift mine. That is the main haulage, but it goes in like a drift mine across the dip of the ore, and the work headings turn off to the left and right and go up and down rather than flat. So, but
Looks like we have a chat,
Yeah.
a question. Says GOB stands for geological overburden and mostly refers to the waste rock and dirt above the coal seam that must be removed and piled up in order to get to the coal in a surface mine. Thus, gob piles are all over the former coal mining areas in Walker County. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
That's
Yeah,
interesting. All right.
yeah, I had never, actually. Okay, I'm sorry. I had a mint in my mouth and it got real small and it cracked. And when it did, I've had a little problem lately with some teeth. And for a second there, I thought another tooth had fallen out. But anyway.
Fortunately, that's not the case.
No,
We're
yeah,
still good.
fortunately so. But yeah, but that's really an interesting picture with
That's
with the wood supports still in there.
That's a neat picture.
Yeah. Now, let's see if it'll
Yeah.
get it to.
Didn't want to move.
Okay.
There we go.
Anyway, that's just a picture of a valve, the handle off the top of a valve that was down in the mine. We usually find two kinds of pipes. We find the pipes where they're pumping water out, and also the pipes where they're pumping the compressed air in that ran the drills, pardon me, and the underground pumps and hoists. What I have here is a container that used to contain carbide. The big canister had carbide in it, and you can see the smaller cans that the miners would use. They would fill those up and carry them around with them so that they could refill their carbide lamps as they're working during the days. And you can see inside of that can, though, they've got railroad tie spikes in it. So after they had emptied it of the carbide, then they just used them for utility cans and put all kinds of parts and things in them. This is a mine car that we found in the number 13 mine. It's down in the number 8 right work heading. It's about 300 or 400 feet down the work heading, and it's the first complete mine car that we found, but that one is completely made out of metal. A lot of the others were made out of wood, and wood is deteriorated off. But you can see how this car, if it was sitting upright, you can see on the right-hand side that the door on it has dropped down. And the way this would work is they would roll it out to the main slope. They had a thing out there that was called a self-activating tipple. When the car got on it, it would lean over, the door would open, the iron ore would fall out into the skip car, and then they would haul it back down into the mine. So that's one of the metal mining cars that they used.
Let's see if we have another question here.
Yes.
Okay, here's another one. Were other minerals mined? I see green. Is that copper? Yellow?
No, actually, that is not, that's a clay or some shale. And I'll tell you one thing that causes you to see some colors in the backgrounds is the lighting that we use.
Yeah.
The background and the minerals and the dirt and things in the mine react differently to the different types of light source. A lot of people use incandescent lighting bulbs. I use LEDs, and I use an LED that is equivalent to sunlight in its temperature, so that the colors that I get when I photograph come out as natural as possible. But occasionally, though, some of the background rock will shine and glow kind of like it is a mineral. But there are some layers of clay that run through there that do turn up, that are naturally sort of a yellow color. But most likely that yellow over on the side of this picture is probably just due to the light source. And a lot of the people that I go with use different light sources from me. So if you end up with 2 or 3 flashlights shining into the same area, you get a wide array of colors.
Just did the, may not work now. There we go.
Uh-oh.
There we
Okay.
go.
Now that's another mine car that, now that mine car is, the one we saw in that's all metal was from the 1920s, 30s. The one that we're looking at now is a mine car that was in a tunnel that was mined during the 1880s and early 1890s. So the mine car had a metal frame, but it was wood on the sides and on the bottom. And in this particular case, it's been sitting there so long that all of the wood has rotted off of it. If you would like to see what this mine car looked like when it was being used, a friend of mine, Bob Ewell, who does explorations with me, and he's also into coal mines and things, he collected enough of these metal pieces off of these mine cars to build a replica. And it is sitting in the parking lot at the museum at Helena, where Ken Penhale is the curator down there. So if you want to see what one of these mine cars like this would have looked like when it was used, you can go there. Also, I believe the museum at Columbiana has some that they got out of the Gurney mines down in Gurney, Alabama, and have restored those. TCI restored them, U.S. Steel, and put them in their museum. That's just a jar that we found down in the mine, an old ball jar. I found another one of those in a mine that still had the lid on it, and it appeared to have green beans in it. But I was afraid to open the lid to find out really what was in it. So I just left it sitting there. A lot of these people will see these artifacts and they'll say, well, are you taking these artifacts out of the mines? And yes, we do take them out of the mines. But if we do take an artifact out of a mine, it goes to a museum, or I keep it and I use it in my talks when I go to talk with kids and stuff. We are not building a collection of things on shelves at home just to hoard. These things are going to be used for educational purposes. We're not like some of these people that run around and just get something and then try to sell it on eBay and make.
Right. Let's see what question we have. They sometimes encountered limestone seams below the iron ore seam, such as along the Vulcan Trail. So they would go ahead and mine the limestone also.
That's true. Back during the early days when they were doing the Oxmoor furnace, they were getting the iron ore off of Red Mountain, but the limestone seam was located I'm guessing about 80 to 100 feet below the iron ore seam. And so for the Oxmoor furnace, they were getting their limestone from the north face of Red Mountain and the iron ore from the south face of Red Mountain. And as you get down to Muskota, the Muskota number 5 TCI mine, after they mined that out from iron ore, they actually did do underground iron ore mining at the number limestone. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm old.
You're doing good.
Cut me some slack.
It gets confusing.
Yeah. They actually did cease the iron ore mining there and started mining underground the limestone. And so they were mining limestone at the number 5, and they were mining iron ore at number 4 and number 6 on the other side of it. And so, yes, there are, as you walk along the BMRR North Trail at Red Mountain Park, you can see the limestone in the rock just to the left there. And also as you walk down the Vulcan Trail going down through there, you can see the limestone in the sides of the hill there.
Okay.
Now this is another one of those, the picture here is another one of those storage containers that they would use to bring in the carbide and use in other tools and supplies. This one still had the insignias on it fairly good where you could read them. That did come out of the mine. We saved it. It's in on the shelf at Red Mountain Park in the warehouse. And someday if they get a place to display it, we'll put that out. And,
that's cool.
Now this is probably the most interesting thing I've ever found in the mine. This just really blew my mind when I saw it. This is in a mine that opened in 1887 to 1889 by Henry de Bartolome Coal and Iron. It's in Red Mountain Park. It eventually became the Ishkuta number 12 mine. But this particular tunnel here was opened back in the 1880s. And when TCI came in and bought Bartolome Coal and Iron in 1892, In 1900, TCI cut a new main slope into this mine. The new main slope was located probably 150 feet west of where this original hand-cut tunnel was located. And so this was undisturbed. They did not disturb any of the old workings. So we found an entrance to get into this old mine. And as we're going down the manway slope into this mine, I looked over and inside along the wall, they had hollowed out little holes, and they were taking these teapot lights. That's about 4 inches tall. And they had a little wick in it, and they would put oil in it, had a little hook. They could hook it on their miner's light. But they had taken it and cut these little holes in the walls and put these lanterns in those holes to light that haulage way. Now, this is basically just a candle. So, I mean, you're in a dark mine and you can't see at all. And you got a candle basically to provide light. But as I was going down this manway, I looked over and I saw 3 of these still in place. This tunnel was replaced in, like, say, 1900. So those things had been sitting there since then.
Wow.
I did bring one of them home that was in good enough condition that I could restore it, and I use it in my mine talks. But we left the others in place because they were just to the point where if you were going to touch them, they would fall apart. So they're still in there. And of course, the mule prints were in the floor.
Yeah, that's cool too.
Yeah.
All right, we've got questions again.
Okay.
For use as supports, a lot of the trees near the mining areas were clear cut, probably used whatever trees were available. Yeah, that's probably
Yes, that's
true.
true. Now, in the 1860s, during the Civil War, the Oxmoor furnace was fired by charcoal. They were not using coal or coke at that point. So what they were doing is they were taking a lot of the hardwood trees and they would cut those down and they would make charcoal out of that to use in the blast furnaces. Then the smaller, the softer wood trees, they would cut those down and they would use those for the support poles in the mine. So basically they would end up clear cutting the property to where there were no trees at all. In fact, after the Civil War, when W.S. McElwain was trying to rebuild and reopen the Irondale furnace, he had a problem because he had basically clear cut his property and he didn't have any more trees. So they couldn't make charcoal and they couldn't get support poles for his mines. And so they were having to purchase those things. And that was one of the reasons that the Irondale furnace eventually shut down in the 1870s and closed altogether. But yeah, trees were very important, and that's why it was clear cut.
So I guess this question about what type of wood was used for the supports was just probably any kind of wood that was available, right?
Right.
Hickory.
Yeah. Mostly what we see when we're in the mines is pine. And it's
Pine.
still, because they didn't even take the bark off of the trees. They just cut them down, carry them in there, and shove them in for supports. So the majority of what we see in the mines that still has bark on it is pine.
Okay. And here's one question. What is the geological origin of iron ore? What conditions were required for its formation? Oh, that sounds complicated.
Yeah, that's you might want to call this guy over at the University of West Georgia. That James probably can recall his name right off the top of his head. I can't, but that's a question that's probably a little deeper than
we can
I
go.
understand.
Yeah.
From what I understand, though, this gentleman came over a couple of years ago and I gave his convention group a tour of Red Mountain. He was explaining that to the people as we went along. And basically you have these the things that created the iron ore was little animal. I'm sorry. The mine is just shutting down. Anyway, he basically called it poop.
Yeah,
It's like these little creatures and all of that. But
I can explain it if you want pretty quickly.
yeah,
Right.
if you can give us a short version, please do, because I'm
Yeah.
totally lost.
Go ahead, James. Give us a short.
Okay. Okay, iron ore is a sandstone. So when this was underwater, under the sea, the sand grains, and it's also little pieces of seashells were on the bottom of the water, underneath the water, on the dirt. And so as the waves went back and forth, they rolled those sand grains back and forth, and they became rounded, just like a rounded river rock, quartzy. And so those are called ooids. Ooid is a term that means egg-shaped. And so as they rolled around, there was bacteria that was living in the water, and the water was a higher oxygen content and had iron in it, and high iron content in the ocean water. And so the bacteria were exuding not only iron, but some oxygen, which helped the iron then adhere to those little rolling around pieces of sand grain. And as they rolled back and forth, it just got coated more and more. And then as more sediment came in and filled up on top of the sand grains, then it started putting them basically underground. And as more sediment came in and more sediment came in, the heat and pressure built up underground and adhered those little round ooids that were coated in iron. It made them into sandstone. So like I said, iron ore is actually a sandstone. And so that's, if you pick up a piece of hematite iron ore in the Birmingham area, like on the Vulcan Trail, you can actually see those little bitty sand grains, and they're covered in iron. So what the blast furnaces did was to remove that iron from around those little sand grains. And you needed a flux in order to do that. And that's what the limestone was for, was to help the flux help remove that iron from those little sand grains. So that's how it originated. There's very few, if any, places in the world now where iron is being created like that, because our ocean composition and chemical composition is different from what it was back then.
Yeah, if you look at the current photo that's on the screen of the carbide lamp, which was the type lighting that replaced that little teapot lamp, if you look in that rock behind it, that's sitting in the iron ore seam, and you can see the little sand grains in that, and those are the oolites, or oolids. And you can see down here at the bottom of the picture underneath the light where it's come loose, and you see all of those down in there. And that's what he's talking about, those little round grains of sand. There was also another type of iron ore, which I guess it was also basically in sandstone origin, but it's called fossiliferous ore. And when you look at that, you can actually see little fossils of plants and things in that. But that's the majority of what we see on Red Mountain is the oolites.
Interesting.
Now that's just a picture of a carbide can that we found in the mine, and took a picture of it while it was still laying there. It's so interesting, all the things that they have. This is just several of the different ones that we found, 2 different sizes of carbide lights and the carbide can. This is I'm not sure what they were putting in that, but it looks kind of like maybe it was kerosene or an oil of some type. So we found that down in the mine.
When I was growing up, that would have been a kerosene can.
Yeah, I would guess it most likely was probably kerosene, but that would be a guess. Then of course you have just your regular oil lamp that we're accustomed to seeing. There's others that we have found in some of the mines. Now this is a pump, a water pump, a steam powered water pump. This is in the number 14 mine. It's down about 10 work headings down into the slope. And that was extremely interesting to find that too, because we didn't really expect to find any really nice artifacts with the mines being flooded. And so this was in another one of the tunnels all of the tunnels that we get to explore are the tunnels that were opened when the mines were first opened. So these work headings date anywhere from 1873 up to probably 1902 to 1905. Everything below that is now flooded underground and we can't get into those areas. So everything that we're finding generally is really old stuff, like this steam powered pump. There's another one of the rollers that was in the ground to protect the cable as it went up and down the hill. Those things are just everywhere you look in the mines. That's just a piece of the water. I'm assuming that we're probably pumping the water out of the mine in that one because most of the compressed air pipes were about or smaller. But I just like that one, the way the light shined on it and you could see the shadow of the holes on the wall. That's one of my artsy photography
Yeah,
things.
that's a cool photo.
I'm
That's a
mostly
really cool photo.
I'm mostly a documentarian photographer. I want things to have all of the details in it so people can see what was there. But a lot of my friends do artsy photography and it's starting to rub off. And so I'm starting to incorporate some of that into my work.
You have beautiful photos, Jeff.
Yeah, I've got, there's a little gallery over in North Birmingham that's been open for 2 or 3 years called Studio 2500. They're doing a 150-year theme art gallery show for Birmingham's 150th birthday. And so they invited me to put some of my industrial stuff from that period in that gallery. That is a roof bolt that helps hold the ceiling up. They would take they would drill those roof bolt rods ran anywhere from 4 to 8 feet long. So they would drill a hole up into the ceiling. In the end of the shaft has a notch in it that they've cut. They would drive a wedge into that notch. When they would put it up into the hole, they would drive that up. It would spread that out and lock that roof bolt into the structure above the mine. And then they put a plate on the bottom of it to hold the rock in place.
To keep the ceiling from falling in.
Yes, to help support the ceiling. We found this dynamite box in one of the mines. And when I first saw it, I thought that curved, rounded thing sticking up out of the top may have been an old stick of dynamite, but that was just a pipe, which I was glad to see that because I didn't want to run into some 150-year-old explosive. That is a dry cell battery. That was what they were using to ignite the blasting caps in the mines. So they had those things are all over the place in the mines. Again, we're back over in one of the main haulage ways with some structural steel to support the ceilings and the wiring going up and down through there. This is over in Muscota. This is in the number 5 mine. This is one of the tunnels that was headed down into the limestone section. The lighting there I was using was an incandescent lamp, so everything came out with kind of a yellow looking tint on it. It wasn't quite really that yellow, but that picture kind of gives you an idea of the dip of the slope of that, the way Red Mountain is. So we're trying to stand up straight and you can see how it is. So when you go down into the mine, it's real easy to walk down in there, but when you start coming back out and you're having to go 1,000 feet back out to the entrance, I have to stop and rest about every 25 feet. It's a lot steeper than you would think it would be. And you can see the gob rock that they've stacked up over there on the side to get rid of it.
Yeah.
An old RC cola bottle, Royal Crown Cola. We found a lot of interesting bottles in there. Some of them are old, and then just a lot of them are bottles from the 60s and 70s. You find some of the new to us back then, the no deposit bottles, you know. And, of course, now everything's plastic, so no deposit bottles. I never figured they'd be collectibles, but I guess they actually are. That's in the number 5 limestone mine where the tunnel's coming down. Of course, you can see the iron ore seam that it's exiting into right there. You see that wire coming across, that's the haulage cable stretched out straight down through there with a couple of wood support poles. That's my friend Bob Ewell. We met years ago. We were out at Ruffner. I was crawling through one of the tunnels at Ruffner and I heard somebody coming from the other direction. So I turned off my flashlights and I got my camera set up, and as soon as he rounded the corner, I took his picture and scared him half to death. But we became very good friends and have done a lot of exploring in the last 25 years. And this is the last picture in the group. Just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. So we always try to go out every year and do a Christmas picture for our Underground Birmingham Facebook page. And so that's Josh Box. He's the guy that goes with me now for 40 something years. I used to do all of this totally alone. I had nobody going with me. I'd give Janet a map of where I was going, and I would stick a flag in the ground at the hole that I went into. So if I didn't come home, they'd at least have some place to start looking for me. But then I met Josh, who contacted me on Facebook, was very interested. I had to do a background check on him first, though, to make sure he was serious about history and not just wanting to do it for the thrill of it. And he checked out, and so he's been going with me, and we do it as a team now, so that at least, there's some degree of safety. And then that's Dave, my minion. He goes with me a lot of times. And so anyway, that's just our Merry Christmas. I hope everybody has a great December photo. And I could go on for days, but really, I guess we're out of time. So thank you so much for everybody's patience and tuning in to hear what I say. And anytime you'd like to hear more, I'll be glad to meet you anywhere. Sit down, we'll drink some sweet tea, we'll talk. I'll take you out and show you some locations. Or if you have any information on mines, I would love to see it, because like I said, there's a lot of stuff out there that I have not read. And I take everything that I say as fact, but my mind is open. If I see something that is contradictory to what I believe, I am very open to changing my mind, because I'm very interested in making sure the facts are correct. So thank you all very much, and for letting me speak.
Thank you, Jeff, very much. I wish we were in front of our group here in person, but we'll have to have you come back when we have when we're no longer virtual, so we can actually see you talk. But you're amazing, and your information that you've given us tonight, I could listen to you all night. Jeff did bring his book tonight. It's called Underground Birmingham.
Images from Birmingham's iron ore mines.
And I'm not sure, hopefully, it looks like my screen is showing it backwards, but hopefully you're getting it correct. And where can people pick up this book?
We do have copies if they would want to get an autographed copy from us, or they're at Barnes and Noble and the major bookstores. Also, you can get it online through Amazon and places like that.
I have an autographed book here, so valuable.
Yeah, that's really going to be worth something.
I can't wait to read this.
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, the company that did that is they were more interested in photographs than history, so they limited me to the number of words I could put in it. But I did open up the first sections of the book with some history on the companies that were operating in Birmingham at the time.
There are some great pictures here. And you will get some of Jeff's words too in the front. I see that.
Yeah, there's some of my, there's some history in there, and there's some of my theories. So if you disagree with some of my theories, I would love to speak with you if you have some documentation, so I can work this stuff all out. Yeah, it's something, it's a passion. I'll probably be headed out this weekend somewhere, be looking for some more mines.
And I'm glad you have somebody to go with you now. I bet Janet's glad too.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah, she is, and so we're getting into. I've been doing iron ore mines my whole life, and Josh is wanting to get into investigating some coal mines.
Ah,
So we have started exploring some of the coal mine fields up around Walker County, and I've been to Parrish, Alabama, and Cordova, and Short Creek, and a lot of those areas up there looking for old mine locations. So we're trying to expand out into coal. But now my family having a background in coal, I respect coal mines. I am not going in a coal mine unless I can feel the air blowing out at 100 miles an hour. Now, Josh is a little bit crazier than me. So one day I expect to plant a wreath in front of a mine for him to
oh no.
So if you go to our site and you see these crazy people crawling around in these coal mines, it's not me.
And what is your site, Jeff, where people can find you?
On Facebook, it's called Underground Birmingham.
Okay, and is your recording, your video about Mine 13 being opened, is that out there?
It is, you may
Okay.
have to, we post something about every other day. So to find the videos, you may have to scroll back.
Scroll back.
But I did 4 videos on the opening of the mine, digging it out, cutting the concrete, breaking the concrete, and building the bars. And I think Josh did a compilation of the whole thing. There's also a YouTube page that we have called Underground Birmingham,
Great.
where Josh puts a lot of his coal mine exploration
okay.
there. So if you want to see a crazy person, that's where you go.
Well, I have watched your Mine 13 opening, and yeah, the video was really good. I enjoyed it
Well, I
very much.
appreciate it. I'm learning how to do that. We're getting there.
So we have one comment from Kristen, very interesting, and from Beth, fascinating, thank you. And wonderful presentation, thank you so much, fascinating. And thank you so much, Jeff, fascinating.
Well, I appreciate it.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, very interesting. It's something we don't get to see usually because we don't go climbing around in the mines. So,
Well, that's my goal is since they don't teach the history, the industrial history of Birmingham anymore. And so that's one of my main things is to try to get out and teach people about the history, because so many of the young people that I meet at Red Mountain Park, when they hike through, they say, I had no idea that Birmingham had this stuff. So that's my goal, is to try to enlighten people as to the history.
So just to mention two reasons that Jeff and others don't go in coal mines or should not go in coal mines. There's 2 things. One, there's gas. You notice there's no gas in these ore mines, but there's constant methane gas in the coal mines. And that's why Jeff talks about, unless he feels a strong wind blowing out of the mine, bringing fresh air in from another blowhole, then he's not going to go in it. The other thing is above the coal seams usually is shale. It's very brittle, very loose stuff sometimes, and the ceiling can fall right down on you in a former coal mine. Even an active coal mine, they have to bolt the ceiling a lot more so than they do in iron ore mines. So it's looser material, and you've got the gas to contend with. So that's the reason to caution anyone not to explore in a coal mine unless you're very sure of that mine and know something about it.
Yeah, now I will say that we do have meters. We had a company up above Warrior that was watching our videos and saw us going in the mines, and so they have donated an oxygen meter and a 4-gas sensor
good.
to us. So when Josh does go into these coal mines, he does have meters that are checking it. And so far, we have never had an alarm condition come up on one of our meters. So
That's great. That's good to hear that you've taken those safety precautions.
we try as much as we can to do it safely. But even with the 4-gas meter, I'm not going in too many coal mines.
Well,
They're too low to the ground. It hurts my back. And like James was saying, when you watch the coal mine videos, you'll notice that there is a lot of loose shale that has fallen and piled up along the edges, so that they are much less stable than the iron ore.
Right.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, we had one other comment. Had no idea these mines were so extensive. Thank you. And this is from Dick Mills, Richard Mills, who is in Asheville, North Carolina, watching you tonight.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dick, and we're glad you're out there watching us tonight.
If you were looking at one of these coal mine maps, you'd think you were looking at a city street map because there's so many tunnels out there.
Yeah.
Now, people, another thing is they'll say, well, did the iron ore mines go under the city of Birmingham? No, they did not. The iron ore starts at the crest of Red Mountain, and it runs in a southeast direction under Homewood and Oxmoor in those areas. So there are no iron ore mine tunnels underneath Birmingham,
Okay.
just the limestone formations.
Yeah,
that
that's
are down
interesting. And then it stops where Shades Mountain comes down.
The ore seams actually extend out further than that.
Okay.
But the problem here is our iron ore quality is about 35 to 40%. So it's not really worth going after anymore. They can get higher quality and ship it into the country cheaper. And nowadays they use so much scrap metal, they don't need as much iron ore anymore.
And some of our major buildings, not in downtown Birmingham, as Jeff said, but some of our buildings are built on top of the mine. Century Plaza was built on one of the biggest mines in this area. And when it was torn down, the Amazon facility is built atop a mine. So we do build on top of them.
Yeah, they do. They're pretty deep though. And most of what they had under Century Plaza, they collapsed most of that when they were building anything that was close enough to the surface. If your mines are 100 feet down and they collapse, you have a 12-foot tunnel, and the way the rock collapses and leaves gaps in it, most of those things never reach the surface anyway, unless it's something very shallow. So you won't find, if it collapsed over there, they probably never would know it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if we have no more questions, we are going to exit our video for tonight. And we thank you for being out there and listening to our presentation. We wish all of you happy holidays, and we hope to see you at the Salamander Festival in January 29th is the day. So we hope to see you then.
Yeah, if you have I do things other than just underground stuff with my photography. If you'd like to see it, some of it, I'm on Facebook also as just Jeff E. Newman. And also I have an Instagram site called letter J Newman 001, where you get a full scope of the types of things that I photograph. It's not all just underground. I do have some diversity. I can photograph anything, I just have a direction.
Well, you have great photos. So, and thank you for sharing your knowledge
You're very
of
welcome.
mining. And I'll clap for all of us.
All right. And someday I would really love to meet Marjorie and sit down and talk with her, because I know that she is a wealth of information, and I'd like to mine some of that.
Yeah, we'll have to get you two together. So, all right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.